Hi, you've just tuned into the Creative Life Podcast, the place where creatives go to find inspiration. My name is Jessica, and I'm joined here by my co-host, Dr. Jackson Gibbons, and a special guest. Dr. Gibbons, who do we have on our show today?
Today on our show, we get to visit with Leia Baez. Leia is a former journalist, an award-winning author, a government communications director, and a mindset coach. She is a renowned motivational speaker, and a commencement speech she gave in 2017 went viral. I believe it had over 6 million views. She has made a career out of sharing her story, and I think listeners are going to be inspired. This happens to be her story that we'll be speaking about.
Yes.
Start for Stella.
Absolutely, and I'm already inspired. In full transparency for all of our viewers out there, I actually had the opportunity to listen to Leia in person give a speech, and she was just absolutely captivating. So I believe that all of you at home, wherever you're listening, either via Spotify or if you're on YouTube, that you're going to find this story inspirational. All right, Dr. Gibbons, how would you kick us off with the first question?
So, Leia, will you please tell us about your current project?
So currently I am working on just telling my story as much as I possibly can. So aside from working as a full-time communications director, I am speaking all across the country, sharing my story, helping people identify the bad habits that are holding them back, and then helping them look within to kind of identify that best version of themselves. So I like to do that as part of my keynote. When I address different audiences, whether it's a women's conference or leadership conferences, young professionals conferences, my goal, my mission is to empower the audience so that they can look within and see what's holding them back, and know that through my story that they can see that regardless of what we go through, we can still be great and we can accomplish anything we want to, no matter what we've been through.
Wow, that's really powerful. I love how you're able to use your story to help craft your creativity. That's pretty amazing. And you have a powerful motto that there's power in your story. So tell us about your journey of turning what were powerless moments into inspirational story. As you said, like this is your current project, is sharing your story with any audience that is willing to listen. So tell us about that path.
Yeah, so it was always me as a journalist telling other people's stories. That's what I did for most of my career. And, I was always intrigued by stories of inspiration and hope and the stories that could uplift someone. And I had no idea, though, that it'd be my own journey of looking within and kind of overcoming my own demons of alcoholism, that once I shared that, it would be my own story that would be leading my career. So, for so long, I was, like I said, sharing other people's stories. It wasn't until I shared my own and had the courage to share some of that darkness and some of the stuff I was ashamed to talk about before that I realized, wow, this is truly amazing what we can do with our own stories, right? There's so much power in owning who we are and not feeling ashamed or embarrassed by the experiences that shape us. Because I wish I would have known when I was younger how much of an impact the hard stuff was going to have for other people. So now those really dark moments in my life get to be messages of hope for others, and opportunities for others to see that anything is possible, regardless of the mistakes that we make and what we've been through.
I think that's really powerful. And for our creatives that are listening, sometimes we want to, when you're writing or you're creating art, you have the ability to erase something. But what you did was you looked into the mirror, like you said, you looked into those dark spots, the areas that had, it was a little messy. Like those are the things that we want to erase and we want to edit out. But you said, no, there's something here. There's a way that I can give hope to others. And what an inspiration, because you also got to lean into your identity of who you are and your authenticity as a writer. And regardless if you're a dancer or a singer or even a writer, there is that point where you have to figure out, okay, how can I tell my story? How can I show my art? How can I show up on this stage? So I think it's beautiful that you were able to take this moment or moments and accumulate it in this work of art, creativity?
I'll say it was not an easy journey.
Okay.
Full transparency,
Talk to us about it. Tell us the hard
because
parts.
it was
Tell us
not
the easy
easy. I
parts.
remember thinking like something inside of my gut telling me, pushing me, saying like, you got to tell this story, So for those of you who don't know my story, or you haven't read my book, A Star for Stella, I battled alcoholism from a young, since I was a teenager. I was a binge drinker. It gradually got worse. And I eventually, was faced with a divorce and a custody battle, and I lost temporary custody of my daughter. And to have to show up to a courtroom and prove your worth as a mother is like ripping out your soul. You know what I mean? It's like, tell me the worst thing that could happen. And even after that happened, I didn't necessarily quit drinking right away. But what that moment did for me was it made me realize who I want to be. It made me realize that I knew that I was meant for more, and I got to do the work to get there. And so I knew at that time that I wanted to quit drinking. And so it gradually happened. And finally, when I, decided to, hit sobriety, writing about that was never, ever in the cards. I never said like, oh, I'm going to tell the whole world this story, right? But I worked on my sobriety, and I worked on, healing and getting through and getting my daughter back and being a better version of myself. And then just something kept telling me, you've got to tell this story. And I didn't want to, it was like one of those things you're ashamed of, you're embarrassed. You don't want people to know that you battled alcoholism or that you lost custody of your daughter. Nobody wants to talk about those things. But something inside just would not let go and was just pushing me to, and I believe it was my faith, and telling me that I had to share the story. And so when I started the writing process, which was actually during COVID, we were stuck at home and I had time to write. There were times where I had to walk away from the computer and I couldn't write at all because I was just crying the whole time. So it was very cathartic for me to go back through those moments and have to talk about them or write them or try to work through them and make sense of them. So it was not an easy journey to be open, but the more I tell my story, the more I heal. And I know that the goal is to be healed, but I don't think you'll ever really fully heal. I think you just continue to own who you are and find that self-love through the process.
Absolutely. I just really admire your bravery because I think that you sharing your story makes other people feel it's okay for me to have my own story. Regardless if they decide to put it to page or to ink or to song, it makes it okay to talk about not being okay. You went through the process, like you said, you went through healing and you're still on that process of healing, and you were writing and it was opening up wounds and you had to address those wounds. And one of the things about creatives is that our emotions are there, who we are is there. And that can come to the surface. So I appreciate you sharing that because someone out in the audience might say, I want to tell my story, but the emotions connected to it, how do I address it? How do I get past it? So you saying, I walked away for a little bit, I processed, I came back. Like you weren't scared as in I want to quit. Maybe you wanted to quit, but you didn't. You made it to the end. And yeah, that's really admirable.
Thank you. Yeah. I think anybody who's watching and is interested and ready to share their story, I think the biggest piece of advice I can give is to go for it. I feel like we have that feeling that we need to share our stories for a reason, and you might not be ready, and that's okay. But I think there are a lot of times when we say, oh, this is a good experience that shaped me, I want somebody to know about it. You don't necessarily have to write a book. You could write a blog about it. You could share it with a friend, talk to somebody about it. Because even when we were verbal about these stories and these experiences, that also is part of that healing. That's part of making sense of why this happened to me and how I'm going to use this to better myself. So it's almost like, it's kind of like a healing process. You hear a lot about healing through storytelling. And I actually lead a workshop on healing through storytelling. And it's about the process of understanding why these things in our lives happen to us. We write about them, and then we see really the shaping it does for us and who it makes us. It's kind of like that. if I didn't experience all this hard stuff, I wouldn't be here talking to you all today, you know? So it's just kind of like understanding, seeing the bright side and even the darkest moments, and knowing that something is going to happen that's great out of those really hard times.
That's amazing.
And you were saying that there were times that you just had to step away. And thinking on that, at what point did you know that your story was done?
Good one.
I don't think my story's done. As far as my book, I think
as far as A Star for Stella.
A Star for Stella. So that's a great question. I actually, was working with several editors for my book, and my goal was to keep it under 40,000 words. And so really, I just felt like this was where I ended the book was a good place for me, because it was showing that I was on the up, and I was just coming on, kind of like rebounding from some hard times. And I think that's what was important for me to show in my story, was that regardless of, the disease and the alcoholism that I battled, losing custody of my daughter, going through a terrible divorce, feeling like my life was over, not having much self-worth, going through all that, but then to be where I was at the end, I felt like that was a good place for me to leave the reader, because I'll probably write another book, at some point. But I think that was a really great point for me to leave the reader.
Okay, that's good.
Now, at one point you were saying that you were accustomed to writing about others. Mm-hmm. And so then it was, sharing your own story. So your journalism background, how did that help your process with writing this book, and how did that hinder your process?
It actually hindered me a bit in the beginning, because I have what I like to call an editor brain. So like every time I would start writing, I'm like, oh, that doesn't sound good. I need to delete it. I need to start over. I don't like how that flows. I don't like the chapter title. And so instead of overthinking it, I decided to just vomit it all on paper and then come back and edit it later. So I'm going to give a little tip here. I actually use an app called Otter, and it's a dictation app. And so a lot of times, because my story was so emotional for me and difficult for me to kind of relive through that writing process, I actually used the app, and I would just speak my words into the app and then send it to myself and go back and edit it later after I had, been done crying. I got through it a little bit. And, that really helped me, because like I said, a journalism major, and an editor, I was trained in my brain to fix everything perfectly on paper. And if you're going to write a book, you just got to start writing. You just got to do one sentence at a time, one paragraph at a time, without overthinking it. And so the only way I was going to be able to do that was if I started speaking into the app and came back and edited it later.
So it sounds as if you were able to kind of wrestle with, this is how I'm going to best process this, and verbally processing it. But then at a later moment, once you had kind of had yourself in a different space, then you were able to tap into that editor journalism part to provide some fine tuning, but you were able to look at the separation between those.
Yes, exactly. And then, I had really great editors. And I just focused on telling the story, the emotions that I felt, the things that were happening in my life. And then I relied on my editors to help with, the fine tuning and to make me sound really good.
I love that. So I'm going to piggyback after Dr. Gibbons. So let's talk about the actual process of the end to end. Sometimes people say, well, how quickly can I write a book? How long is it going to take me? 6 months, 3 months, 3 years? So let's talk about how long it took you. And I also love the fact that you're using technology, because sometimes we shy away from technology, or people might feel ashamed from using technology, but technology can actually help us. Just as you illustrated, it helped you get through those emotional parts. It helped you turn off your editor brain. It helped you get content on a page. And so let's talk about how long it took from the beginning to the publishing.
Yeah, it took me a year, and I started during COVID. So I just kept writing, and I had accountability. Like I was part of a cohort, so like I had some accountability, surrounded me and people to support me, to push me to get it done and meet deadlines. And so I was really grateful for that. And it can be done. A lot of people will say, "Oh my gosh, that seems like such a massive goal." And honestly, like I also thought publishing a book was such a massive goal, but I loved how my editors kept telling me, like, just break it down to one sentence. It's just one sentence. Like, don't focus on the whole chapter. Just tell your story, just tell what's on your heart and speak your mind. And so that's why the app did come into play for me and was very beneficial, because I sometimes was just so emotionally caught up in the story that it was hard for me to sit at a computer as I'm crying and like write. It's easier for me to take a walk and write and talk into an app and get that out there. So it was very beneficial to have good people surrounding you and supporting you. And there's a lot of book editors out there. So if anybody, wants to write a book, there's so many programs and editors available to help. But yeah, it just starts by one sentence at a time. You just gotta get the story on the paper.
I love that, one sentence at a time, and then also having a tribe. This is something that all creatives should have. They should have a team, a tribe, because sometimes it's hard to do something in a silo. You're just by yourself. But when you have someone to encourage you, or like you said, accountability partners, there's other people that are going through the process with you. There's power in numbers, as they say. And so I think it's beautiful that you're sharing that this was my path, and this could also be a potential path for others to say, okay, you have an idea, but maybe you need some support to bring this idea to fruition. You don't have to be the one person that does it all. You can be the one person with the idea who shares it and then gets a team to build it all.
Yeah, I like to, say so much that accountability is so important. There's that quote, I think it goes something like, nothing great is accomplished alone. And it's so true. I wouldn't have accomplished, so many things in my life without people supporting me. And my book getting published, I had, like I said, a cohort of other authors I was in, and also editors supporting me, cheering me on. So yeah, having people supporting you is definitely important, no matter what the creative project is, right?
Exactly. Exactly. No, I couldn't agree more. So let's see. I was able to listen to you give a speech, at full disclosure to all of our listeners at the beginning, and you did something that I feel is remarkable, and that is that you shared space for others. And so I want to ask you, why is it important for those with a platform to share space with others?
I love that question so much, because I'm very intentional about that, actually, about making sure that I hold space for my audience and for people that I work with, especially when it comes to storytelling, because we all have a story to tell, and your story might just be what someone else needs to keep going. I had somebody reach out to me on Instagram today, actually, and I don't know this person, but she saw my story, and she's 11 days sober. And she said, I keep going, and when I feel like I'm gonna quit, I just open up your Instagram and I'm reminded of why I'm gonna keep going today. And so I don't even know this person. And it's so amazing to know that I am having an impact on somebody else simply by having the courage to talk about the really hard things in my life. And so that's the same thing you can do, and that's the same thing you can do. And all of us have power in our stories. And when we share that, and when we're open and we have the courage to be vulnerable, incredible things can happen. So getting back to the space, when I was getting sober, so many people held space for me, and so many people were there for me in my lowest points of my life. And so I feel like I owe it to others to hold space for them and allow them to fill their cup, and also know that anything's possible when we believe in each other, when we believe in ourselves. And so I love bringing people on stage and sharing their stories. I love when people are engaging with me in the audience. And I make sure that I do that everywhere I speak, because it's important for me to get on stage and share my story, but it's even more important for others to see the person sitting next to them has a powerful story too.
Absolutely. No, I think that others can learn from you because one, art can transform. It can transport you somewhere, but it can also transform you as a human being. And so someone reaching out to you and saying your story is giving me hope. That's beautiful. That's what art can do. Regardless if it's music or if it's dance or if it's a book, you have the ability to connect with someone and help them through what is their day one, that might be your day 100 or day 1000, that they're feeling like, especially like if you ever heard music and it just transforms you, you're like, where am I? A book can do the same thing. And with social media and telling your stories and how you're so on brand, I want to say that too, is that your branding is very consistent, and that is making space, telling stories, and stories matter. So when they hear yours, they can connect with it. And you have an aura about you that's, I am approachable. And so when you were sharing space, I was like, wow, that's huge for someone who, one, you're award winning, you've had a wonderful career, and you shared some of the darkest times of your life to give hope to others. It can be easy to say, this is all my time, but you didn't. You said, I'm going to make time because this is my brand, like this is my motto, storytelling. And yeah, it's I think others can learn from that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, of course.
I have a question. You know, had been thinking about your story, and you kind of kept feeling this tug that you needed to tell your story, right? And it was a healing and cathartic process for you. Did you anticipate that this would also start healing process for others?
Had no idea. You know, I did this because I felt like it would help me make sense of things and understand things. You know, I didn't want to be divorced. I didn't want to lose custody of my daughter. I didn't want to have to fight for custody. It was just a time of a lot of shame, and I didn't see myself there. That wasn't part of my vision, you know. And so the fact that I did go through that, I felt like I wanted people to see that anybody can experience alcoholism. I wasn't homeless. I wasn't just like kind of the stereotypical person who was battling. I mean, we all have something we fight. And I just wanted to normalize sobriety and to normalize that people, even successful award-winning journalists, can struggle. And I wanted to normalize that, not for everybody else, but really for me. Like, I wanted to make sense of this for myself. And so that's why I decided, you know, I'm going to share this story and utilize my skills as a writer to do that. And I think that it's just, sobriety is just this gift that keeps on giving. And the fact that now that I'm almost 5 years sober, and I'm super excited about that. It's an amazing feeling. But I get to be an incredible role model for my daughter. I'm present. I'm going to try not to be emotional, but it's really amazing to be free and to be who I know I'm supposed to be. And that's something that if other people can see that and see what's possible, despite whatever they're going on, you know, they have going on, their struggles, then I'm so happy that I can be that light for them and to show them what's possible.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's okay to be emotional because you're making us emotional.
I know.
Sorry. Do we cry? Do we not cry? But crying is okay.
Yeah.
And I think that sharing something as powerful as you are sharing, it's okay to have emotions. And I appreciate the vulnerability that you have with us. And so for the final question, before we start wrapping it up tonight, someone approaches you and says, I'm your biggest fan, an aspiring creative. What is the one rule I should live by? How do you respond?
Own your story. Love who you are, even in the darkest moments, and embrace your failures, because those moments are the ones that shape you.
That's great advice. And so thank you so much for joining us today. And for our audience, wherever you are, know that your art is worth it. And if you like this episode, if it touched you, please feel free to like it, to subscribe, to share. You can find more information on our blog. We'll have information for Leia as well as all her social handles, so you can make sure to follow her. And for a lucky winner, we have some giveaways as well on books, so a signed copy, which would be really amazing. And so Dr. Gibbons, why don't you go ahead and sign us off?
And I'm Dr. Jacqueline Gibbons. Thank you so much for joining us for the Creative Life Podcast, where creatives go for inspiration. Good night.